Have you been following what's happened to Miss South Africa?
Miss South Africa 2021 is Lalela Mswane!
Lalela Mswane was chosen to represent South Africa at this year's Miss Universe pageant in Israel. Turns out some people weren't so happy about that.
We have made a clarion call to Lalela to boycott Miss Universe
We do not want Miss South Africa to go and carry that flag.
because it is been held in an apartheid state.
They are sending a message that apartheid Israel should be shunned.
The South African government even pulled their support.
Israel is an apartheid state, essentially. We had to distance ourselves entirely.
We've been hearing this message over and over for years, but how many of us have taken the time to stop and ask a simple question? Is Israel really an apartheid state? As people who experienced apartheid firsthand, it's appropriate for us to try and honestly answer that question. So, let's take a minute to compare Israel to apartheid South Africa. Did Israel ever legislate discrimination against Arabs the same way South Africa did against its non-white population? No. On the contrary, from day one, Israel legislated equality for all its citizens, including Arabs and non-Jews. This is explicitly articulated in Israel's Declaration of Independence, which says that the country will ensure complete equality of social and political rights of all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. Israeli Arabs have full and equal voting rights. Today, an Arab party is part of the coalition government ruling the country. Are Israel's Arab citizens banned from Israeli hospitals, beaches, buses, and restaurants? No, 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 and no, no, no. And yes, Arabs who are not citizens of Israel do have less freedom of movement, but this is not because of discriminatory legislation. The Palestinian-controlled territories are governed by regimes that are hostile to the existence of Israel. And as such, Israel is compelled to enact security measures to protect its citizens, both Jewish and Arab, against continuous terror attacks. So, as we look at the totality of this information, we have to ask ourselves, is it fair and accurate to call Israel an apartheid state? Lalela Mswane had a dream to make South Africa proud, and she took herself off to Israel with a message of peace. The boycott failed to stop Lalela, but the damage to Israel's character and reputation was done. So in the end, maybe it doesn't matter whether Israel really is an apartheid state or not. The people who are making this claim know our history, and frankly, they know the truth. They know that Israel is not an apartheid state, but because of the evil of apartheid, because of what it invokes in us emotionally, they know that they can manipulate people, that they can cause us to get on the streets and march and protest and drive yet another wedge between the country and its Jewish citizens. And I seem to recall that there's a word for that: anti-Semitism.